Say, any of you boys, Smithies?
Mike, thank you so much for being on the program and for your question there at the courthouse.
Absolutely, Benny. It's great to be back with you.
That was wild little time. It looks like you got some photographers snapping photos of you.
Yeah.
You said I was witness to Joe Biden's crimes on Air Force Two. Can you elaborate, please?
Well, so that's what's in my book. The book is The Case for Impeachment President Joe Biden. A year ago, I made a tip to the FBI in February. I witnessed a crime. The crime was I was a stenographer. Jake Sullivan came back and explained to the press on the plane 4 things. They asked him, what's Joe bringing for energy assistance to Ukraine? He mentioned 4 things. 2 of them directly benefited Burisma. No one on the plane at the time knew that Hunter Biden was secretly on the board of Burisma. This is April 21st, 2014. Joe knew. Joe knew because he had a meeting with Burisma board members, Hunter Biden and Devin Archer, in his office 5 days before that. This is in the laptop. These are the emails that are going through the laptop that they don't want to validate, but now they're validated. So I sent a tip to the FBI, and they never got back to me. I sent information to that grand jury, to the guy that was doing that question and answer, David Weiss. He was doing a grand jury in Delaware. Never got back to me. I called their office. They wouldn't take my calls as far as, did you get my information? Do you want me to be in front of grand jury? Wouldn't touch me. So I wrote the book. After I wrote the book, I sent a copy to one of their lawyers, a guy named Leo Wise. Leo Wise was one of the prosecutors in the Hunter Biden trial. He was standing next to David Weiss. As they run out, I'm yelling the question, and they still won't have me in front of the grand jury.
Even though you have the exculpatory evidence that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Joe Biden was engaging in foreign policy that directly benefited his family financially.
Yeah, this is actually, and so after, this is really significant. After I had this confrontation with him in this thing, I went straight downstairs and sat out in front of that building. Well, as I was waiting there, Leo Wise, who I sent my book to, comes out the front door, and I chased him down, and I asked him, hey, Leo, I want to be in your grand jury. I sent you my book, and I have an audio of it, and he would not admit that I had sent him a book. He says, look, I can't talk about the grand jury. I said, so I'm a witness to Joe Biden's crimes. Can't you have me as a witness in front of the grand jury? I can't talk about the grand jury. And so I kind of chased him down, and then he ran away. I mean, literally ran away from me as a citizen saying, I've got evidence of Joe Biden being a criminal. Your grand jury is investigating it. Why don't you talk to me? I can't talk to you, and ran away. Their grand jury, the special counsel, is a fraud. That's the evidence that I just described. They aren't willing to take all the evidence. It's not the whole truth. It's just their version of the truth. We're going to talk about Hunter. We're not talking about Joe.
So it is remarkable, if you actually are a short and quick study and student of history, to go back and see that the FBI and federal agencies were willing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for corroboration of the Russian dossier. They did everything that they possibly could to try and dig up and pay for evidence to nail Trump, and they got nothing. And yet here you are standing there with a flaming bag of evidence, which is something that you witnessed as you were a government employee. Yes, you worked for the Obama administration. Yes.
Yeah, I worked for Trump for a year. I worked for Obama for 7 years, and I worked for Bush for 7 years. So I worked a pretty big span of time there in the White House. Because of that, I wrote the book. That's why I wrote the book. That guy Leo Wise has the book. The book is the evidence, and I had to write the book because I knew after last summer the way the investigation of the oversight committee was going. I got interviewed by them too. I knew that it wasn't going to go for Joe. It seemed to be directing away from Joe and also Barack Obama. There's a whole conspiracy that's in my book that takes in Barack Obama, the Ukrainian embassy, the American embassy in Ukraine, Ambassador Pyatt, and Victoria Nuland are all part of this. And these guys, that's what I would tell the grand jury. And they won't give me a chance to do it. So I had to write the book. This is the evidence. And I was in the court proceedings last week telling journalists at the Washington Post, in NBC News, here's my book. I would open it and show them a passage of it. And they would look at me and they would just say, they knew me because we used to work together. And they would say, oh, okay, that's great. But they don't want to report on it because they're getting scooped by a stenographer. They can't stomach that.
Would you be willing to cooperate with a real special counsel that was appointed in a second Trump term?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you were a firsthand witness. You're very credible, Mike. You worked for all these administrations. It sounded like almost 2 decades, right? In the federal employ, working for multiple, a bunch of different administrations. And so again, you don't seem like a political crazy. You're like somebody who like witnessed a crime, and there's nobody is interested in investigating that crime. And
it's not just the DOJ, it's also the media. So I'm sitting there amongst the media and I'm showing them my book, and they know I've written this book. I talked to David Nakamura at the Washington Post. Oh yeah, I was talking to somebody about your book recently. He and I were on the same trip that Joe Biden took in 2013 December that had Hunter Biden on it. So we were talking a little bit about that. And I said, David, there was some really bad stuff that happened on that trip. And I talked with you guys about it on my last appearance with you, where that started this corruption what they had with Metabiota. And I said, David, there was some really bad stuff. He goes, I know there was some really bad stuff. That's as far into it as he would go. He doesn't want it. They don't want to dig into it. They're sitting on this story. They haven't acknowledged the laptop exists. They don't want to acknowledge it exists. And I'm shoving it in their face. Here's my book. This is the laptop. These are transcripts. There's a video of Joe Biden committing a crime in Ukraine, and you can't report on it, and they won't report on it. And they won't investigate it in the grand jury. That's the travesty. The Congress could defund that grand jury. They could defund the special counsel just because they aren't looking at Joe Biden. This is just like Alina Habba said, this is just a diversion.
Is that what you think about these? I mean, you were there at the courthouse. You're the first person we've spoken with who was actually there at the courthouse. Your snap takeaway on these gun charges? Yeah,
absolutely a diversion. And I was shocked that they came back guilty, actually. I was standing right outside the courthouse when they did, and Hunter's aunt was trying to get in, and they wouldn't let her in the door. Boy, she was spitting mad, And one time I was up there, I drove up, it was a long drive, and I go into the bathroom, and who walks in? Hunter Biden when I'm washing my hands. So I'm like,
well, really?
This is kind of weird, man. I'm getting out of here.
What'd you tell him?
I didn't say anything. I just got away from that guy. He's too weird. The stuff you see that came out in this trial and the stuff that's in the laptop, this is a deranged guy, and he's part of a deranged family. And to be honest with you, sitting there and looking at the jury, the way the jury reconciled this, there was like 2 parts of the jury, and they said this. So the 6 juries were sure it was guilty. This was a slam dunk case on the evidence. Mm-hmm. If you're just looking at the evidence, it was a slam dunk case. If you wanted the emotional pitch about you have Hunter's life in your hands, and there's the first lady in the front row, and you're an important person to have this position as a juror, then you would hesitate. But they went back and they went to their homes and their communities overnight, and they thought about it, and they're like, you know what? We're not backing Joe Biden. We don't want Joe Biden we've got to come through for America, not Joe Biden, not the Biden family. Because what came out in the trial was there's a deranged, disturbed family. And the press, some of the press were finally getting it, how evil in the background the Biden family is.
Yeah, I think that's perhaps, and there's a long list, Mike, but perhaps one of the greatest modern lie told is that the Biden is some family of decency and normalcy. And it's just all the way from Joe and Jill's story to the way they raise their kids, to the disaster that is their kids' lives, to the disaster that is their grandkids' lives. This family is a rotten mess, man. I mean, these are they're inhumane monsters.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe Biden is a win at all cost politician. He's done terrible things to our country and our world, and we're going to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing you on the stand, Mike. You know, I'll say we knew him when, right, Mr.
Yeah.
Smith goes to Washington. We appreciate you, Mike, and we appreciate your clear-eyed bravery in all of this, because you are sort of David versus Goliath. You're standing up against the behemoth here, and looks like I don't know. It seems like there's some cracks in the facade now, and it's uplifting to see. It's uplifting to see. I think people are waking up.
Thanks, Benny. Yeah, buy the book. If this book goes to #1 on Amazon, all these media guys don't know what to do. They don't know what to do because it's right in their face, and I'm going to continue to get in their face with it.
The case to impeach and imprison Joe Biden. From your typewriter to God's ears, Mike. Thank you and Godspeed.
Thanks, Benny. Thanks for having me on.